She wore nothing from top to bottom. Cough. Chow Moyu felt it was difficult to breathe for some time now, as if a quilt was covering her face while she was trying to sleep. She opened her eyes with much effort, only to be stunned by what she saw. Before her was an office with clear windows and an open space. The sunshine sprinkled into the large room with an interior that was so clean, not a single speck of dust could be spotted floating in the air. Beside her was a hand, with a white long sleeve pulled up to the forearm, revealing exquisite vintage cufflinks. Admiring those long arms, Chow Moyu shifted her gaze and saw the owner of this hand. It was a tall man with sharp facial features that displayed a noble and indifferent temperament. The man seemed to be frowning deeply. His eyebrows were slanted sharply and were knitted like a whirlpool. He looked extremely unhappy. There was unhidden hatred and disdain in his eyes as he locked gazes with the woman in front of him. His entire personage emitted a menacing aura, causing Chow Moyu to feel chilly for no reason. What kind of situation is this? Her entire brain was still in a state of stupor until she noticed the pressure around her neck that made it difficult for her to breathe. Only then did she realize that the man in front of her was grasping her neck. She unconsciously looked down with great effort at the hand that clutched her throat. She saw that her own hands were very pale and there was a vintage watch on her wrist. Chow Moyu didn't know what brand it was, but it must be very expensive. How could she be experiencing such a dream? In the past, she dreamt that she had difficulty breathing and that all the windows in her house were shut. And now, she's dreaming that a man was suffocating her. It seems that her dreams have upgraded this time around. Chow Moyu lifted her hand and wrenched the man's grasp away from her neck. She yelled harshly, "Let go, you're suffocating me." She felt shocked after speaking. This wasn't her voice at all. Her current voice sounded strange and enchanting, and was the most disgusting and seductive voice she had ever heard in her entire life. The man in front of her released his grip in disgust and replied to her in a voice that was as bitter as the icy wind, "Chow Moyu, you don't deserve to be in Ruahuan's shoes. Even if you stand naked in front of me, it will be the same as watching a pig." Chow Moyu blinked in confusion. She felt that something wasn't quite right, so she looked down at her body. Just one glance, and her mind exploded. She wore nothing from top to bottom. Although this was a dream, the details were just too vivid. Her mind was bursting. She subconsciously squatted down and quickly covered her private parts. She felt frightened to death, but she recovered her bearings slowly. Chow Moyu? Rohuan? As in the Yu Rohuan? Weren't those characters from the novel, the film Empress Loyal Dog CEO, which she unintentionally read last night? The female protagonist is Yu Rohuan, who later became a film empress. And the loyal dog in that story was the company president Xing Yichen. There was also a villainess in the story named Chow Moyu, who had the same name as she did. In fact, this wasn't important. The key is, that character was brainless. Clearly, her family background was very good, and the character herself was very beautiful. But she fancied Xing Yichen, the male protagonist, who was very insensitive towards her. Xing Yichen and Chow Moyu have known each other since youth and can be considered childhood friends. When Chow Moyu was 13 years old, she desperately pursued after the 17-year-old male god. However, she didn't know why, but after Chow Moyu finished her medical treatment abroad for her burns and returned home, the man was very cold towards her. It wasn't until 5 years later that the man would meet the female protagonist and fall in love at first sight. Moreover, the female protagonist, Yu Rohuan, told him that she was kidnapped since childhood and was forced to separate from her biological parents. She asked for his help to find them. As a result, the male protagonist inadvertently learned the truth behind Chow Moyu's family and discovered that the female protagonist was the true daughter of the Chow family. Thus, the female protagonist officially returned to her biological parents and became the jewel princess in the Chow family, while Chow Moyu fell from being the favored miss to the present foster daughter. In addition, she repeatedly schemed against the female protagonist due to her jealousy and was directly driven out of the family. The man she adored since childhood was snatched away by some other woman who came out of nowhere. Furthermore, her home was taken away by this same person. This caused Chow Moyu's heart to blacken. She sent video recordings and photos of the female protagonist with other men to Xing Yichen anonymously. She also played the role of a white lotus in front of him. Finally, when the male protagonist realized her intentions, Chao Moyu resorted to stripping off her clothes and drugging the man, hoping she could turn raw rice into cooked steaming rice. However, since she was the villainess in the story, it was inevitable that her schemes would fail. Thus, no matter how she seduces him, she will never win his affection. The female protagonist not only becomes the film empress, she also wins the unswerving love of the male protagonist till death. And Chao Moyu, the vicious childhood friend, meets a distressing end. Her adoptive parents ignore her and her child went missing. In order to repay her mountain of debts, she constantly performed all kinds of obscenity for bald businessmen and was shunned by millions of people. Finally, she committed suicide in front of the man she loved, hoping to imprint herself in his memory forever. Unfortunately, the male protagonist didn't mourn for her at all. He regarded her to be as worthless and disgusting as mosquito blood. Upon seeing her dead body, he frowned in revulsion, quickly ordering others to drag her away and feed her to the dogs to save him from the nausea. After reading the novel ending scene of the woman who shared her name, Chao Moyu was very upset. Afterwards, she gave Left a review with a score of -2 points, and even gave 99 comments a score of 0 points. Also, she can spit on this dog blood plot. After venting her displeasure, she fell asleep, not knowing that she would dream herself into this story. After thinking about her situation, it seems that the tragic ending scene had yet to arrive in the future. Around the current timeline, the male protagonist Xing Yichen had just discovered that Chao Moyu was very much in love with him. Since both of them were childhood friends, he considerately hinted to her a few times, hoping that Chao Moyu would retreat from her pursuit. However, instead of retreating, Chao Moyu stirred up contention between the male and female protagonists' relationship. And even on the grounds of a simple visit, she stripped herself bare in hopes of enticing Xing Yichen. If Chao Moyu had guessed right, the male protagonist should have consumed the drugged water. The original woman's intention was to bed the man at the hotel, then bring over the child to say he was responsible. The current Chao Moyu squatted on the floor, thinking that even though she was dreaming right now, it was still uncomfortable being stared at naked by another man. Her gaze swept the room in search for her own clothes. While looking around, she thought to herself that even if Xing Yichen swallowed the drink, he wouldn't do anything to her, right? After all, the story said that the male protagonist would run to the bathroom and drench himself in ice-cold water even if he catches a fever, rather than to touch a finger of his childhood friend. At this thought, Chao Moyu suddenly felt relieved, because her usual life in the real world was already quite difficult. Who knows when it started, but people around her discovered that she was like a walking lucky koi fish. Just by touching her hand, one can pick up 10 yuan as a fortune when heading out. During one instance, she brushed against a young man's shoulder twice. When he left, there were 2 girls who rushed up to him hoping for marriage. The girls even fought fiercely for the position of his wife. Therefore, Chao Moyu in the real world was like a walking treasure. People can't wait to stick around her all day. Even if they can't be so close, it was good enough for them to touch her twice. Thankfully, she had her brawny brother to protect her. He gave specially painful beatings to those who tried to lay their hands on his sister. But it was difficult. After all, her brother can't follow her everywhere all the time, such as when she heads for the ladies' restroom. Because of this, she would have to deal with these headaches quite often. Even if she tried to intimidate others with a bad temper, there were still those who came close to her and succeeded. Unexpectedly, she ended up in a dream where someone actually disliked her to the point of not wanting to touch her. Chao Moyu was very satisfied and happy. But at that moment, the man who hated her suddenly said in a cold voice, "Why don't you roll away?" Chao Moyu thought this was all a dream anyways, so she happily snapped back, "Then you be my spare tire." How can she just roll away and leave? After she spoke, Xing Yichen was speechless. His brows knitted even deeper. Shameless. Chao Moyu was too lazy to pay attention to him. She stared at clump of fabric and asked, "Xing Yichen, where did you hide my clothes?" When the man heard her mention his full name for the first time, he smiled disdainfully. His body felt sweltering hot and he tore at the collar of his shirt irritably. "Didn't you throw your own clothes out the window? Wow, there was such a thing?" Chow Moyu secretly praised her predecessor for being so bold. She stood up and walked step by step towards the suite, deciding not to waste time arguing with this man. After getting dressed, she must stroll around this dream and savor being treated as a worthless mosquito blood. "What other schemes do you have?" Xing Yichen's eyes glimmered dangerously. She shrugged her shoulders and replied indifferently, "I'm going to cover up my entire body with pork meat." Didn't he just say that watching her naked was the same as watching a pig? When she entered the suite, she opened the wardrobe and saw a collection of new shirts and pants. Xing Yichen was very tall. She chose a shirt that was hung and wore it. The shirt reached 10 centimeters above her knee and was just as good as wearing a skirt. Before she came out, she stared at the 1-meter-8 bed in the lounge. According to the author, Xing Yichen and Yu Rohuan would be as intimate as turning the clouds and rain towards the end of the plot. However, right now, it seems that they were still in the early stages of love and have not yet progressed to that point. Now having something to wear, Chow Moyu was in a good mood, and even considered this a rare gem of a dream. The only nauseating part was Xing Yichen's complaints. After stepping forward, she suddenly had the urge to go to the bathroom. At this time, Xing Yichen didn't know if his discomfort was due to a drug's effects. He pulled off his tie and threw it aside hastily. Chow Moyu was first to occupy the bathroom. After solving her needs, she clapped her hands and stood up. Suddenly, she felt the blood rush to her head. She can clearly feel her heart beating furiously in her chest. If this was a dream, why is she able to use the restroom? Which dream wouldn't end in waking up when one needs to use the toilet? Moreover, the scene before her at this moment is so vivid that it's impossible to only be a dream. Which dream would be this detailed? Chow Moyu felt chilly from the soles of her feet and her heart sunk from an ominous premonition. She raised her eyes and stared at the mirror above the sink. She felt as if she was struck by something when she saw the strange face reflected before her. The woman was very beautiful. Her attractive eyebrows and clear pupils were as the stars and rivers. Her nose was straight and tall and her lips were like open petals, with a natural cherry red color. Those lips were raised to a smile, making her whole face look cute and lovely. Her face had a pure kind of beauty, but her body was so sexy it could cause nosebleeds. Chow Moyuan observed that she had a C+ cup for her bust. Even when wearing a man's baggy shirt, her clothing couldn't hide the proud scenery inside. She had a slim waist, a rounded backside, and white slender legs that were almost impeccable. It was as if she never had a child, as the book described. She recalled that in the book, the original host's appearance was completely natural, without a trace of cosmetic surgery. So, all the facts implied that she crossed into a story and became Chow Moyu, the woman that Xing Yichen despised. It's not like she's never read the novel either, but now she's really experiencing it for herself. It was like an indescribable fantasy at this moment. As she washed her hands and rinsed her face to test her sense of touch, she had no choice but to recognize this as reality. What she wants to know is, now that she's crossed over, will everything in her future follow the plot in the novel or will it change? Is her previous life's lucky koi attributes still there with her? After holding back her doubts, she decided to just take things step by step. She's not in a hurry to leave the bathroom, since she needs to figure out her situation. Because she recalled in the novel that when the original Chow Moyu had left the bathroom, a staff member had recorded her in her disorganized clothing. Later on she became popular as a star, but because of that video recording, she was completely blackened in public and was accused of seducing Xing Yichen when she used to be a junior actress. However, the novel also said that Xing Yichen suffered terribly after drinking the drugged water. Chow Moyu would take advantage and take a picture together, but the man would push her to the ground then rush to the bathroom, where he would shut himself in and take a cold shower. She looked around. Hey, she occupied the bathroom to herself, so how was Xing Yichen supposed to take a shower? Ha ha, well this is embarrassing. Sure enough, Xing Yicheng pulled the bathroom door open. He struggled to suppress his anger and lust as he spoke through gritted teeth. "Chow, get out of there." In fact, Xing Yichen has already noticed unusual changes to his body, not because of anger, but rather. This woman, she actually dared to drug him. Can she be more repulsive than this? The veins on his forehead were swelling and he felt a raging fire on his abdomen, eroding his willpower. Unconsciously, he even began to visualize Chao Moyu's provocative figure which he had just seen. Her body was excellent and her skin was soft like gelatin. Even if he was licking her neck in anger, the soft and delicate skin he felt under his palm was so smooth, he had the urge to grasp it. When this thought came, Xing Yichen suddenly had an idea. Feeling as if his body was about to explode from desire, he endured his state and spoke with a chilling voice. 1, 2. In the bathroom, Chao Moyu was dumbstruck by President Xing's means. If he doesn't solve his physical need for a woman right now, who knows what he will do to her afterwards? She just recently crossed over to this world. Everything was still unfamiliar, so it would be best to follow the plot for the time being. Before Xing Yichen could count 2, 3, Chao Moyu swung open the bathroom door open. The man had already reached his limit. Ignoring her, he rushed directly to the shower and quickly drenched his body in cold water. The water soaked his white shirt and poured down his body, outlining his fine body and his looming V-line. It should be noted that the male protagonist's body was truly top-notch. As Chao Moyu sighed in appreciation, she suddenly noticed Xing Yichen's fiery glare, firmly locked on her figure by the door. She sprang up quickly and slammed the door. "Wash yourself well, I won't disturb you." Chao Moyu came out of the bathroom but she didn't leave the suite immediately. Because if she leaves looking like this, her reputation will be destroyed immediately. She needs to prepare a change of clothes right away. She recalled that there was certain female employee among the secretary group that worked under Xing Yichen. That woman was acquainted with the original Chao Moyu. She also remembered her name. So she went to Xing Yichen's desk and opened the address book to her right. After finding the secretary's number, she immediately contacted her. "Hello Mr. Xing," Monica greeted. "Monica, it's me," Chao Moyu replied. "I need you to go and buy me some clothes. My current outfit has a tear. Remember to buy a complete set and deliver it immediately to the Xing General Office." "Miss Chao," the secretary replied in surprise. She then replied, "Oh yes, I'll purchase it right away. Please give me a moment." After relaying these instructions, Chao Moyu hung up. She noticed a pink mobile phone on the desktop, which she presumed to be the original host's belongings. She picked it up and unlocked it with her fingerprint, then scrolled down the chat records. As she examined the contents, she somehow recalled the follow-up plot. Around this timeline, the original host, original Chao Moyu, should be heading to the acting crew to report to work immediately. She was part of a historical drama that Xing Yichen invested in and played the role of the second leading woman. The original host had begged for the role of female number 3 from her father, Mr. Chao, about a month ago. At that time Mr. Chao had driven her out of his household, but she still had the courage to go to his office shamelessly. She demanded the role because she wanted to become a film empress and defeat the female protagonist through her natural beauty. However, her high expectations would only shatter in disappointment. That's because the leading actress of this drama was Xing Yichen's sister who had always hated the original host. As a result, Chao Moyu endured constant bullying within the acting crew. The fact that she lacked tactfulness also ended in her offending everyone. Eventually, she would leave the set with her heart completely blackened. While the current Chao Moyu was deep in thought, the front door intercom sounded. "Mr. Xing. Miss Chao asked me to deliver something." "Bring it in," she replied. Xing Yichen had not yet come out of the bathroom. Chao Moyu took her clothes and went to the dressing room to quickly get changed. Afterwards, she found a place to hide herself right away because there was one more thing she needed to confirm for herself. After some time, Xing Yichen walked out while wiping his hair dry. Based on his body language, he was still feeling sour. Since he no longer saw Chao Moyu in the vicinity, his mood improved a bit. He quickly got changed and walked out of his office. Upon hearing the man's movement, Chao Moyu quietly followed after him. Once Xing Yichen exited the office, he should be heading out to give orders to someone, but instead, Chao Moyu saw the man bend down to pick something from the ground with his precious fingers. When she saw what Xing Yichen happened to pick up, Chao Moyu cursed in her heart. Because the man had picked up 100 yuan. In other words, his act of licking her neck for a long time could also be considered touching her. So he was able to pick up a 100 yuan? Does that mean that her lucky koi fish attributes have upgraded after transmigrating? Xing Yichen picked up the money and went up to his employees at another nearby office, then asked, "Who dropped 100 yuan?" After examining their pockets, they all shook their heads and replied, "Boss Xing, it's none of ours." "Judy, order 5 cups of coffee and invite everyone for a drink," Xing Yichen said. Chao Moyu wanted to die at this moment upon seeing such a scene. She turned to walk away while nobody noticed her. Just when she had reached the bottom of the steps, she received a phone call from someone called Yu sister-in-law. She knew that this was the nanny the original host hired to care for her son, Chao Zilla. Chao Moyu answered the call. "Sister Yu." Mrs. Yu's voice sounded anxious through the phone. "Miss, I took Luo Luo to the park near the community's entrance. He's been crying and won't stop. Where are you? Can you come over and have a look at him?" Chao Moyu could hear the boy's cry across the screen. She immediately replied, "Okay, but which park are you referring to? Send me the location on WeChat." She received a message from Mrs. Yu shortly after. When she arrived at the site 20 minutes later, she saw a woman in her 40s holding a boy in her arms. It was summer at this time. The little boy was wearing a yellow t-shirt with blue shorts and a pair of caterpillar-style shoes. At this age, the child had a bit of baby fat. His arms resembled lotus roots with his white and tender skin and his small, crinkled face. When he saw Chao Moyu, he suddenly stopped crying. His big eyes were wet with tears and his small mouth flowed with saliva as he looked at her, but he didn't call her mother. The bright sunlight shone on his chubby cheeks. Just by looking at his round little face, one can imagine a vague outline of his handsome appearance when he matures in the future. The boy truly deserves to be the original host's and Xing Yichen's baby. He's so beautiful, Chao Moyu sighed in admiration. But then, she suddenly remembered how, according to the novel's plot, the original host schemed for Xing Yichen to take responsibility for the child. The male protagonist obviously never shared an intimate relationship with the villainess, let alone having a child with her. So this boy wasn't Xing Yichen's child, but rather, the original host's son from another man? But the book never mentioned who the father was. She felt as if there were more headaches to worry about. Before she crossed over to this world, she was only 18 years old. And now, she suddenly has a child over 2 years old. This put her under a lot of pressure. At this moment, she reached out to the boy with her hand while wondering how the original host would get along with the child. She then displayed a reassuring, gentle smile with crescent-shaped eyes and said, "Baby, why are you crying? Come here, give mom a hug." Luo Luo looked at her in confusion. He seemed to feel as if something was wrong. The boy blinked. Soon, the tears in his eyes overflowed, trickling down his round face and falling on the back of Chao Moyu's hand. The girl felt as if her heart melted. However, when she had the yearning to embrace Luo Luo, the little boy suddenly turned his head and with a HMPH sound, he buried his face directly into his nanny's arms. Luo Luo ignored his mother and hid behind his caregiver's shoulder. But his lips, covered in saliva, were slightly raised to a smile. Luo Luo hid his face so no one noticed his sudden smile. Since the child no longer cried, the company of 3 went home together. The original host's home was quite good. This was passed down to her by her grandfather when she was still a part of the Chao household. Although she was driven out of the family, she was still able to live in this property. When the 3 of them entered the house together, Luo Luo squatted down to change his shoes to indoor flip-flops. His little hands were white and tender. After putting on his footwear, he ran with his short legs towards his room, making pitter-patter sounds. Fearing that the boy might accidentally trip, Chao Moyu worriedly called out, "Baobei, slow down, don't fall." Upon hearing his mother's call, the little guy ran 2 more steps before stopping. He turned to look at her and answered seriously, "Luo Luo has grown up and will not fall." Chow Moyu laughed. She remembered how the book described the original host as someone who wasn't very close to young children. Since the second female lead was hopelessly in love with Xing Yichen, she chased after him and tried to make him responsible for the child. She was also a little perfunctory when taking care of her son. Although the original host wasn't mistreating Luo Luo, she also wasn't particularly caring, nor did she spend much time with him. The present Chow Moyu recalled her playful little niece from her previous world. She liked this little girl a lot. As she gazed at Luo Luo, she couldn't help but think of that niece. In the novel, Xing Yichen refused to accept Chow Luo as his own while the original host's financial situation continued to crumble. Eventually, Luo Luo caught a fever that further developed into pneumonia, resulting in his hospitalization. During that time, the original host was imprisoned at the police station for several days because she hid a reporter. When she got out of prison and went to pick up Luo Luo from the hospital, she discovered that her son had disappeared. She searched for him endlessly, but was unable to find him even until the novel's ending. Chow Moyu felt distressed at the thought that a boy this lovely would meet such a pitiful end. Because of this, she longed to be close to him. Chow Moyu walked to the middle of the room and pretended to fall. "Ouch, it hurts so much. I need someone give me a kiss so I can get back up." The toddler who was running off suddenly paused. When he saw his mother on the ground, he suddenly froze on the spot and his eyes widened. Feeling deeply conflicted, he turned around and scurried to her side. The little boy reached for his mother's hand and stood beside her, motionless. When Chow Moyu saw little Luo's fleshy little face, she had the urge to pinch it, but first, she presented her cheek next to him. Luo Luo gazed fixedly at his mom's face for 2 seconds while pouting. Finally, he planted his small lips on her cheek. Once Chow Moyu felt a damp sensation on her side, her heart immediately melted. She faced the toddler and showered plenty of kisses on him. Feeling happy and cheerful, the young woman took Luo Luo's hand and praised him with a smile. Luo Luo helped his mother up with a kiss. "He's such a good boy." The little fellow blushed red at her words. He quickly turned around and looked away. Yu's sister-in-law went to the kitchen to cook while Chow Moyu played with Luo Luo. At this time, her cell phone rang. The screen displayed Sister Wu, who worked as her agent. Sister Wu spoke to her through the line and said, "Chow Moyu, don't forget to come to the studio early tomorrow morning. I'll ask Xiao Su to pick you up around 8 o'clock. In her previous world, Chow Moyu was annoyed at having almost zero privacy. Now that she arrived here where she was thankfully abandoned by the male protagonist, why would she give up her comfortable life and privacy by becoming an actress? That was why she refused the offer immediately. "Sister Wu, I actually requested this acting role from my grandfather. But maybe..." Before she could finish her sentence and say the words, "I'm not suited for this," a bright light suddenly shone on her wrist. The shimmering light was soon replaced with a precious gem bracelet. Wasn't this the original host's missing bracelet? Why did it appear just now? While Chow Moyu gawked in confusion, she felt a message transmitted in her mind, saying that she must help the original host achieve her wish to become a film empress. If not, she will die without being able to return to her previous world. Chow Moyu almost fainted from shock. At the last second, she changed her mind and replied, "I may need more practice, but I'll try my best to act the role." Sister Wu was somewhat disappointed by her words, but she didn't think much of it. Instead she said, "Well then, hurry up and come." Afterwards the agent hung up the phone. Chow Moyu put away her cell phone in annoyance and examined her wrist. The bracelet was there, but the deadly threats had disappeared. She sighed with relief, then noticed that Luo Luo was staring at her. Chow Moyu immediately crouched next to Luo Luo and asked, "Baobei, do you think mom's bracelet is pretty?" However, the toddler looked at her with a blank face, apparently unaware of what she was referring to. Does that mean little Luo can't see the bracelet? Feeling puzzled, she touched her wrist but found nothing there. After Yu's sister-in-law prepared their meal, Chow Moyu placed Luo Luo on a booster seat and spoon-fed him. She said encouragingly, "Here it comes." Chow Moyu placed a piece of fish in front of her son's mouth. The little boy immediately parted his lips and ate it. Chow Moyu laughed. She held another spoonful in front of him, this time with pumpkin. The toddler stared at the piece of vegetable. His long eyelashes fluttered delicately, like the wings of a black butterfly. The boy's soft eyebrows frowned slightly as he hesitantly looked at the pumpkin for a few seconds. Still, he opened his mouth and accepted it. Chow Mo immediately placed the pumpkin in his mouth. The child chewed twice before his expression crinkled into a ball. It seemed very unappetizing as he swallowed it with difficulty. Next to them, Nanny Yu exclaimed in surprise. Luo Luo never eats pumpkins, but he actually ate when you fed him. As soon as the comment was made, the little toddler shifted in embarrassment. Unfortunately, he had already swallowed the vegetable, and could not spit it out again. When Chow Moyu saw his arrogant appearance, she smiled thinking it was too cute. The young mother cut another piece of the vegetable and made engine-like sounds as she delivered the spoonful to his mouth. Baobei, you can't be picky. Pumpkin is very nutritious and baby's eyes will be brighter after eating it. Of course, my little Luo's eyes are clear right now, but they will be much brighter and cuter after eating. She continued to coax. Baobei, eat one more. The little toddler was reluctant, but he still gave in and opened his mouth. Seeing that her son finished chewing, she grinned in satisfaction. Chow Moyu bent over and kissed his small face. The boy's cheeks suddenly turned red. After the child finished his meal, he began to feel drowsy before 8 o'clock. The nanny gave Luo Luo a bath and brought him to his room. His mother shared bedtime stories as the boy laid in bed. Apparently, the little baby had never heard of those stories before, so he was very curious. But in the end, he couldn't resist his drowsiness and soon drifted into sleep. Early the next morning, Chow Moyu was escorted by car with her assistant and was dropped off at the production crew. The historical drama she was part of was adapted from a novel. The book sparked a fire 7 years ago and had garnered a large number of fans. Meanwhile, the drama's female number 3 had very little screen time, even though her character was the first love of the story's male lead. Based on the original host's memory, Yu Rohuan herself could not win this role even if she had begged grandfather Chow for it. It's a little early at the moment and the main actor and actress had yet to arrive. The drama's female number 1 is played by Xing Wanshuang, Xing Yicheng's sister. Because of their sibling relationship, she soon became a first-line actress. And the leading actor is the ever low-key film emperor, Yi Peicheng. He is the second son of the Yi group, which holds considerable power. It's rumored that he prefers acting to business. 5 years after his debut, he hardly ever relies on his family relations and has succeeded with his own efforts. Yi Peicheng won impressive awards one after the other and is reputed to be one of the most popular male actors these days. Just then, a loud cheer echoed outside. Chow Moyu raised her eyes and saw a tall man walking slowly towards the set, surrounded by a crowd. His eyebrows were cold and sharp as a knife and he carried a calm temperament. His dark eyes seemed to reflect the dark night. Is that Yi Peicheng? Chow Moyu sighed. Even the supporting protagonist in this world was breathtakingly stunning. While she was deep in thought, the man's eyes slowly swept towards her. Not a trace of emotion could be seen at the bottom of his eyes, as if the world he saw before him was lifeless.